9 programmers exposed by an unexpected delivery girl. The amazing moment that humiliated everyone. Sarah zoomed through the sprawling campus of tech giants, her delivery bag bouncing against her side like a persistent reminder of everything she was fighting against. She carefully maneuvered her bike past gleaming glass buildings, each one a monument to innovation and intellect, a stark contrast to her own life as a delivery girl. Now, on a routine lunch run, the atmosphere shifted sharply. As she slid to a stop outside a highly sought-after cafeteria, she found herself inadvertently close to a table occupied by 9 elite programmers. A fragment of their conversation sliced through the usual lunch chatter. "What does she even know about tech?" one sneered. Laughter erupted around the table, mocking and dismissive. Sarah felt heat rising to her cheeks. She had poured her heart into coding for months, toiling under the dim light of her cramped apartment, sacrificing everything to become more than just the girl on the bike delivering lunches. The laughter began to echo in her mind, a painful drumbeat of self-doubt that threatened to drown out her determination. Battling the urge to turn away in humiliation, Sarah's heart raced. She had once been a confident computer science major, but the weight of her responsibilities had crushed that dream. Now, she couldn't shake the gnawing anxiety that she would never measure up, never belong. What did they know of her struggles? Their easy arrogance contrasted painfully with her hard-won struggles and sacrifices. With her mother being her only cheerleader, Sarah felt the pressure mount. Her mom, lying in bed, battling illness, often told her she had a bright future ahead. But those words felt distant now, especially in the presence of those 9 self-assured techies. She could hear them still. Who dreams big enough to be successful delivering food? Another laugh chimed in, and Sarah's nails bit deep into her palms. How could she possibly prove them wrong? Before the thought fully developed, it slipped into her mind. A resolve ignited. She would not concede to their jeers. Feeding off the adrenaline, she rushed home after her shift, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Hours stretched into endless nights as she juggled this job with her newfound obsession with building an app that could genuinely make a difference. Each line of code became a rebellion against their ridicule, chaptering a story that was only just beginning. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Pressure mounted as a prestigious hackathon approached. Sarah knew the 9 programmers she had overheard would be competing, their personal jibes bolstering her nerves. She felt the weight of their judgment on her shoulders. Days blurred into nights, filled with coding and self-doubt, each task a test against her insecurities. Every dismissive glance she caught from them reinforced her hunger to succeed. And finally, the day arrived, the hackathon a swirling storm of tension. As her heart raced, she set up in a sea of confident souls flaunting their fancy degrees and flashy tech. Yet Sarah clung to her purpose, to make an impact through empathy and understanding, particularly for those facing mental health challenges. As she watched the programmers hustle around her, her stomach churned. Would they ever acknowledge her work? Or would this moment become an invitation for deeper ridicule? The question loomed over her, mirroring the urgency inside. She glanced one last time at the imposing figures, faces hardened by their superiority, ready to unleash her efforts onto this stage, a climax laden with uncertainty. Would this truly be her moment, or merely the beginning of another battle? The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, a cacophony of excitement amidst the snappy chimes of keyboards and casual banter. Sarah's pulse quickened as she tapped her fingers nervously against her laptop. The clock sinisterly ticked away, counting down to the beginning of the hackathon. Her app, a mental health resource combining features of mindfulness exercises, community support, and immediate access to professional help, was not just a project, it was a lifeline. Setting her jaw, she scrolled through her code one last time, making sure each detail was precise. In that moment, anxiety morphed into focus. It dawned on her that this was more than a competition. It was a declaration. Each keystroke echoed the struggle she had faced, the late nights of self-taught skills, the laughter of the 9 programmers lighting a fire beneath her ambitions. Their laughter would be her fuel. As the competition commenced, she glanced over at them, still flaunting their superiority like confident gladiators in the arena. They exchanged knowing smirks, referencing the latest technologies and degrees, dismissing the value of her approach with a mere glance. That dismissive attitude felt like a challenge, igniting an urgency within her to demonstrate her capabilities to the world. She cranked out code, each function painstakingly crafted with empathy at its core. Anytime her mind drifted to self-doubt, she reminded herself of her mother's voice, a metaphorical whisper of strength that urged her to trust her instincts. Every time she felt her spirit falter, thoughts of why she was here brought calmness. Her app was a manifestation of hope, a means to empower those who felt as lost as she sometimes did. 2 hours in, she glanced at her competitors. A wave of frustration washed over her when she caught one of them openly mocking her from across the room. But instead of retreating into herself, she leaned in. Closer to her screen, eyes narrowing in determination. She would show them that there was intelligence beyond their pages of textbooks and industry accolades. She tapped away diligently. As her project neared completion, she felt palpable urgency. But then the unexpected happened. Her laptop screen flickered ominously. Panic clawed at her. She could not let all her hard work disintegrate due to a glitch. With her breath hiccuping in her throat, she fought through the panic. Focus, she commanded herself, fixing error messages and rebooting essential components, unwilling to be derailed. Finally, with the final check of her code complete, Sarah took a deep breath as she took a step back, staring at her creation. Confidence surged as she thought of the potential inches from her fingertips. She would share it with the world, regardless of whether the programmers acknowledged her genius. This was a step toward reclaiming the narrative of her life. With moments remaining, she prepared to submit her entry, a juxtaposition brewing inside her. A fear of exposure was battling triumph. But she would refuse to let that dread hold her back. Releasing her submission felt liberating, a symbolic shedding of doubt. It was time. The countdown clock struck 0, and Sarah found herself surrounded by an uneasy silence. The tech giants who had belittled her earlier were now noticeably tense, eyes reflecting apprehension over the impending announcements. Then, a voice boomed across the room, laced with authority. "We're ready to announce the submissions." Each word stirred Sarah's anticipation, but the significance of this moment weighed heavy on her heart. Would she stand among them, or would this all be for nothing? In that instant, doubts resurfaced, a collision of hope versus fear. As the host began to reveal the names of the finalists, Sarah could feel her breath hitch. What if she didn't make it? What if this moment crumbled beneath her? The tension mounted, deeper than before, propelling her into an abyss of uncertainty. But it was too late to turn back now. The moment to face her fears had arrived, and with that realization, she braced herself for whatever was to come next. The room held its breath, suspended in the moment as the host continued announcing names, each one echoing louder than the last. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, competing with the silence that hung like a thick fog. She tuned out everything, the commotion, the nervous whispers of competitors, the impatience in the air, all part of a distant world. This was her moment, and yet it felt like a cruel trick of fate. And the next finalist is James Anderson. The cheer that erupted was deafening, drowning her thoughts, making her pulse quicken with panic. James looked over at her, a smug grin plastered on his face. Memories of his mockery resurfaced, each piercing word a reminder of her outsider status in this tech-driven arena. The weight of his laughter hung in the air, suffocating her determination. She pressed her lips together, willing herself not to show any reaction despite the dissonance clashing within her. With each name that followed, the realization of her potential exclusion from this sphere of recognition pierced deeper, testing the resolve she had forged in the fiery moment of her submission. Then came the turning point, the announcement she both yearned and feared. And the final spot goes to Sarah Hall. The world exploded around her. A mix of disbelief and triumph flooded through her as she registered the words. The name that had often been marginalized now reverberated among the giants of technology. Gasps and murmurs erupted, and one glance at the audience told her everything. Shock mingled with envy etched into faces that had once disregarded her so easily. As she stood up, heart racing, adrenaline surging, she felt their eyes bore into her, some incredulous, others hostile. Each hesitant clap ushered her forward, but it was as if the applause was sheathed in layers of criticism, hidden beneath a veneer of reluctant respect. She approached the stage, every step echoing her internal monologue. Could she do this? Was she worthy of standing among these titans? Unbeknownst to her, each step was a statement, a message to herself more than to the audience. She could feel her speaking nerves coiling tightly, yet she tapped into the determination that had driven her all along, the desire to be recognized for her intellect, her emotional insights, and her vision. Standing at the podium, nerves churned with excitement. She shot a glance at her app displayed behind her, bright, bold, alive. It was more than a simple aggregation of features. It was validation, personal and professional. She felt her mother's voice resonate, as if encouraging her from a distance, reminding her this was her calling. Thank you. Just 2 words, yet they unleashed a flood of apprehension, propelling her deeper into the moment. I created this application to reach those who may feel lost in their mental health journeys. Everyone deserves support. Her voice steadied with each word. She talked about empathy in technology, the necessity of understanding users' emotions, and the drive behind every line of code. But as she spoke, hidden intentions lurked in the crowd, silent challenges, skepticism simmering beneath the surface. She locked eyes with James. An unspoken confrontation sparked between them. All the defiance she had harbored, all the mockery, flickered through her mind. A struggle pushing her to prove there was more to success than accolades alone. Finishing her pitch, the applause was strong, but laced with a bittersweet tension. Some clapped for her merit, while others clung tightly to their indignation. As she stepped away from the podium, she had a singular thought, a desire to delve deeper, to uncover the truth about herself and her place within this technology circuit. Would she be able to bridge that gap between merit and acceptance, challenge the skepticism without losing her essence? The journey had only just begun. As the crowd began to disperse, Sarah felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find herself face to face with James, his expression stern, yet curious. "We need to talk." Her heart raced. The confrontation had arrived, and as she prepared to navigate the storm ahead, the real question loomed. What would it take to earn not just recognition, but respect? Sarah felt a chill rush down her spine as she turned to face James, the words hanging heavy in the air between them. The room swirled with echoes of her presentation, but all she could focus on was this confrontation, a pivotal moment that could either solidify her newfound place or unravel it completely. "What do you want, James?" she managed to ask, her voice steadier than she felt. His brow furrowed. She recognized the tension in his posture, a mix of challenge and curiosity. "I just want to know how you pulled this off," he said, arms crossed defiantly. "You've always been different. Now you're here, and it doesn't sit right with me." The accusation stung, but it propelled Sarah to stand tall. What did he know about her journey? "I worked hard to get here," she replied, a flame igniting within her. "Unlike you, I didn't have connections or a safety net. You only see the surface. You don't know the sacrifices I made." James's expression shifted, disbelief mixed with intrigue. "You think I'm threatened by you? Isn't that what this is about? You thrive on belittling those who you think are beneath you." The energy in the air crackled with unresolved tension, and the surrounding audience ebbed and flowed like a tide, creating an uncomfortable bubble around them. She could feel their gazes drifting toward the confrontation, and for a moment she feared she would crack under the pressure. But this was her moment, wasn't it? The journey from obscurity to recognition had cost her dearly, and she wouldn't let it be undermined. "Look, James, this isn't about us anymore," she found herself saying. "It's about doing something meaningful, something that allows people to feel seen in their struggles." The words pulled James back, and for a brief flicker, she could see the vulnerability flashing in his eyes beneath his guarded facade. "You think you can change things just because you're here?" he inquired, still skeptical. "I know I can," Sarah asserted, a surge of confidence igniting her passion. "That's the point. Technology has the potential to lift people up, to connect with them on a human level. You may not get that, but I do." He stared at her, and she sensed the internal grapple between his long-standing arrogance and her burgeoning credibility. "Why don't we make a bet?" he proposed. "If your app really is as groundbreaking as you claim, then we can collaborate. But if not, you need to step back into the shadows." An icy determination shot through her. The proposition hung in the air, precariously balanced between doubt and opportunity. Could she truly handle this? If she succeeded, it would be a definitive claim to not only her work, but her worth. If she failed, dismissal awaited her in full force. "I'm in," she replied, surprising herself with her assertiveness. "But let's make it clear, I'm not backing down, even if it gets tough. I'm only here to rise." As she stepped back, James's expression was inscrutable, yet inwardly he looked to weigh her words. Turning away, Sarah felt a whirlwind of emotions, fear, excitement, and a renewed sense of purpose. She had to prove herself not merely as a developer, but as an innovator in a space fraught with prejudice and preconception. The next few days loomed ahead like a labyrinth of challenges, yet she couldn't ignore the lightened weight of knowing she had put herself in a position to fight back. But as she pulled out her phone, ready to strategize her next steps, a message notification lit up the screen. The words jolted her. The potential of a partnership was now tinged with chills of doubt. "Sarah, we need to talk. There's something important you need to know about the app." Her heart sank as the realization hit. This was only the beginning, and the stakes were higher than she had anticipated. What hidden truth awaited her in this technology cycle, and could it push her closer to or further away from the respect she craved? Fighting the urge to ignore it, she braced herself for whatever revelation was about to unfold, knowing that it might change everything. Sarah stared at the screen, anxiety rippling through her as her mind raced. The urgency of the message weighed heavily upon her, a relentless pulsation that demanded her attention. An important discussion about the app could mean a critical pivot in her forthcoming confrontation with James, but the source behind the message unsettled her. Who would shed light on her creation, and why now? She contemplated her options: breathe, respond, disregard. Each choice overlapped, merging imperative with fear. Would it hint at flaws in her design or unveil something more? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, a flood of questions flooding her mind. Did she dare reveal her insecurities, or was she prepared to embrace whatever truths awaited? Finally, she tapped the screen, fingers trembling slightly as she crafted her response. "I'm available. When and where?" Just seconds later, a reply pinged back. "Meet me at the cafe down the street in 1 hour. Trust me, this is crucial." A surge of determination coursed through her veins. The cafe was a local haunt, often bustling with creativity, the perfect spot for new ideas, but also rife with judgment and spectacle. just where she didn't want to be under scrutiny. Yet, the gravity of the situation deemed it necessary. As the clock ticked down, Sarah gathered her thoughts, aligning her focus on the goal ahead. Rather than succumbing to doubt, she chose to see the meeting as an opportunity. Maybe the message would serve as guidance, offering her insights that could bolster her case against James. What did she actually know about her app? Was it truly groundbreaking? The hours slipped by in a blur, and soon she found herself in the cafe, the familiar aroma of roasted coffee beans weaving through the air. She took a deep breath, steadying herself as she scanned the room for the person who would bring clarity to her swirling thoughts. Then she spotted her, a young woman with a bright purple beanie perched on her head, scribbling furiously in a notebook. Intrigued, Sarah approached her table. "Are you Zoe?" The girl looked up, surprised but smiling warmly. "You must be Sarah. I'm glad you could make it." Sarah slid into the seat across from her, the weight of the moment pressing down. "So, what's so crucial about the app?" Zoe leaned in, her eyes glinting with enthusiasm. "I've been watching your development. Most people don't realize the underlying issues with how our software can manipulate user emotions. Your app is riding a fine line. There's risk involved, especially with data security and ethical considerations," she cautioned, urgency threading through her tone. Panic flickered at the edges of Sarah's thoughts. "What do you mean? I thought we built it with user safety in mind." "Your intentions are good, but technology is unpredictable," Zoe replied, matter-of-factly. "If you plan to present it to James, you can't just rely on its connectivity features. Think about who might misuse that power. You need to anticipate various outcomes." Sarah's heart raced. The implications were staggering. Was there a flaw in her vision? An oversight that could ruin everything she worked for? As she began to question her approach, a part of her fought back against the tide of uncertainty. She had placed so much faith in her ability, and yet now she felt like a novice entangled in a web of complicated ethics. Could she trust herself to pivot? Was leaning on fear just as paralyzing as her initial doubts? Zoe's voice broke through her thoughts. "You're a visionary. Just remember, clarity can emerge in the messiness. Focus on the core of your intentions, then amplify those." Sarah nodded, letting Zoe's words sink in. Amplify. That resonated with her. After their conversation, she felt a new sense of urgency and clarity. This wasn't merely about an app. It was about creating technology that honored the human experience without compromising it. As she walked out of the cafe, determination sparked within her anew. This was a moment of reckoning. She would no longer be a bystander in her narrative, but a force to be reckoned with. Yet the harder truth gnawed at her. Was she ready to confront James armed with fresh strategies and newfound insights? Unsure but resolute, she knew the real challenge lay ahead. Confrontation loomed, and an unsettling thought bubbled beneath her bravado. The real question was whether she could withstand the thunder of her own aspirations crashing against untamed realities. Just as that notion settled, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a detailed message from James. "I want to finalize details for our bet. Are you ready for the consequences?" The stakes just got higher. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as she absorbed James's message. "Finalize details for our bet." The phrase hung over her, a combined weight of opportunity and dread. A bet not merely on the app, but against her very integrity. The stakes were spiraling beyond her initial comprehension. She stepped onto the sidewalk, fighting the rising tide of uncertainty. What exactly did he mean by consequences? The narrative was shifting, yet the core of her purpose remained fixed in place. Zoe's words echoed in her mind, urging her to amplify her intentions. But how could she channel a vision amid turmoil? Each step resonated not only with the rhythm of the city, but a deeper cadence within her, a renewable force pushing her forward. Arriving at the development hub, tension coiled tight in her stomach. Sarah pushed through the glass doors. The workspace buzzed with activity. Engineers huddled over their screens, lost in the euphoria of creation. She felt small amid this chaotic energy, yet also awakened to the electric current of innovation that pulsed through the air. No one here knew what was swirling within her. No one recognized the storm about to break. Taking a moment to compose herself in a corner, she weighed her thoughts. James, a smart, charismatic competitor, could easily unravel everything she'd built unless she approached him armed with confidence and knowledge. There was no room for error. She needed to weave her narrative tightly, presenting her app not just as a tool, but as a movement towards ethical technology. As she prepared mentally for their conversation, she remembered her training sessions and brainstorming marathons with her team. Those moments of synergy had ultimately crafted her vision. In the eye of the storm, she seized her laptop, opened it, and flipped through the design specs. Everything had been carefully constructed. She had fashioned a tool that could uplift and empower users, but now she needed to affirm its integrity, transforming it into a defensive shield against potential critiques. The clock ticked down as she paced outside the meeting room, beads of sweat tightening like chains around her wrists. What formed in her mind was not merely a pitch, but a manifesto, a proclamation of her commitment to responsible technology. Focus on the core of your intentions, Zoe's words erupted in her consciousness, reshaping her doubts into strategic thoughts. She began to craft a vision of transparency, projecting user safety without compromising on creativity. She wouldn't just respond to James's skepticism, she would challenge his limited perspective. The door swung open, revealing James, his expression revealing the confidence that had often intimidated her. But today she felt the surge within her as an equal, no longer merely reacting but ready to instigate change. "Sarah," he greeted, his voice oozing casual arrogance. "Let's see what you've got." Determined and emboldened, Sarah entered the room, feeling empowered by her decision to uphold her vision. They sat across from one another, the atmosphere weighted with the tension of unspoken challenges. As she began to articulate her refined ideas, the words flowed with an intensity that surprised even her. Each point underscored her commitment to user ethics and robust security. James leaned back, assessing her with narrowed eyes. His silence was a potent mix of intrigue and disbelief. The dynamics had shifted. He wasn't simply a formidable competitor, but a mere echo of her past self. Just as she gathered momentum, forcing the conversation toward her vision, he interjected, "And what makes you think users care about ethics and technology?" His words dripped with condescension, and for a moment doubt flickered in the periphery. But it was in his challenge that Sarah found clarity. "Because they should," she retorted sharply, a newfound conviction coursing through her. "Because they have the right to feel safe. Our tech should enhance the human experience, not manipulate it for profit." James leaned forward, the spark of challenge igniting across the table. "Brave words, but reckless ambitions can backfire. Are you truly prepared for the ramifications?" In his question, Sarah discerned not just concern, but curiosity, maybe even respect. The air was thick with the realization that they were on the brink of something transformative. Would this tough conversation become a platform for her evolution, battling not just for her app, but her principles? As their dialogue intensified, Sarah felt muscles tightening in response to uncertainties. She was aware that as she navigated this confrontation, a deeper clarity would demand to be wrestled with. The devil's advocate of her own doubts danced in the corners of her mind. Could she withstand the pushback against her vision, or would she stumble into the labyrinth of fear as she had so many times before? Just as she was about to summarize her sentiments, James's phone buzzed in the silence. "Let's continue this," he said, glancing at the message, "but I need to make one last call." The moment stretched, heavy with unfulfilled potential, leaving Sarah poised at the precipice of determination, realizing that the real confrontation still lay ahead. Would she rise to challenge not just James, but the very nature of tech ethics herself? In that loaded silence, a new question rattled in her mind. Was she ready for all the battles yet to come? Sarah's pulse raced as James turned away, his phone consuming his attention for a fleeting moment, yet it felt like an eternity. The interruption belied a storm brewing within her. This was more than just a pitch. It was a litmus test of her beliefs, her purpose, the very fabric of what she fought to create in the tech landscape. Just beyond the door, engineers and developers remained oblivious to the war waging in her mind. Each click of a keyboard resonated with her internal struggle. Was the world really ready for ethical technology, or were they trapped in a cycle of convenience and exploitation? That anxiety clawed at her with relentless ferocity. The silence in the room weighed heavily. It compressed her thoughts into a singularity. What if everything unraveled? She steadied herself, remembering Zoe's encouragement to transcend limits, to elevate intentions. James was trying to push her into the abyss of self-doubt, but she had a choice. She could either let his skepticism pull her under or fortify her resolve. As James ended his call, she caught a glimpse of his relaxed demeanor. Was he truly confident or merely a facade masking uncertainty? She had to exploit every inch of insight she'd gained, every lesson learned through countless sleepless nights refining her app. This was her moment to shift the narrative from fear to power, to transform skepticism into a challenge she could navigate. "Let's get back to where we left off," James said dismissively, leaning in. The casual confidence was back, but it had lost some of its sting. Her voice, now steady, washed over the tension lying between them. "You asked me why users should care about ethics in technology," she began, the words firing like bullets. "Because technology doesn't exist in a vacuum. Every line of code, every algorithm decisions shapes real lives. People are beginning to see that their data is more than a commodity. It's an extension of their identity." James raised an eyebrow. It was a small opening, a crack in his demeanor, revealing his intrigue. She arrived at this moment not just as a challenger, but as a beacon for a cause far beyond herself. Many current apps focus solely on growth and profitability, sacrificing user integrity along the way. I want to change that narrative, create not just an app, but a movement that prioritizes user trust and ethical standards. If innovation is going to thrive, it must elevate our humanity. His piercing gaze held hers, and in that moment, she saw flickers of realization spark in his expression. He was questioning his own instincts, perhaps feeling a fraction of her conviction. "But how do you plan to hold yourself accountable? In the tech world, oversight often slips through the cracks," he challenged, the remnants of his arrogance now tinged with curiosity. "That's the crux of it," he forced her to confront. "I'll forge partnerships with independent regulators, ensure our processes are transparent. We'll build algorithms that users can audit. I want our vision to thrive without secrets. Ethical technology isn't just aspirational, it requires actionable commitments." The wild cadence of her thoughts found expression in her words, each one resonating deeper than the last. The thread of passion unfurled and connected, ending at a pivotal point. "What you call reckless," she continued, emboldened, "I call necessary. We are in a defining moment where technology must align with human values, or else we will lose sight of what it truly means to be human." Intrigued nods now entered James's posture. This wasn't merely a showdown. It felt like a hatch opening to a collaboration that had not flickered on either of their radars. Perhaps this competition could give rise to something greater. Yet, just as she aligned herself for more incisive retorts, a sliver of dread crept back in. What if James intended to use her proposals against her, to undermine the very principles she was espousing? With each question he posed, she felt a tightening in her throat, the familiar sting of fear creeping back. But she'd already stepped too far into her new identity. Creating was about a leap of faith, and she had to trust in her vision, manifesting the integrity she sought in this pivotal moment. As these thoughts spun in her mind, urgency replaced hesitation. The weight of their confrontation circled dangerously close to a tipping point. She sensed that they were no longer negotiating an app, but challenging the landscape of the industry itself. With determination spinning within her, she shifted gears. Let's change the framework, James. Let's collaborate on ensuring that tech, first and foremost, aligns with what we owe to our users. Or we could sit across from each other for weeks and remain adversaries. Your choice. In those words, she released the tension that had been coiling, placing the power firmly back in her hands. James leaned back thoughtfully, clearly weighing the implications of her challenges against his own interests. The urgency of his next move crackled in the air like electricity. As seconds stretched into infinity, the weight in Sarah's chest lightened just enough to reinforce her bravery. Whatever happened next, she realized, the battlefield would redefine itself here, and it was time to fully confront her beliefs. Would the drive to advocate for ethical tech unite them, or would it ignite a full-blown conflict? In that moment, Sarah's resolve coalesced into clarity. This was just the beginning, and her next steps demanded the same courage as the first. What awaited them both remained shrouded in mystery. Would they end as allies or rivals? The next decision hung in the balance, waiting to be made. Sarah's heart danced between apprehension and exhilaration. The brief silence that settled felt like an invitation to plunge deeper into uncharted territory. Would James embrace the challenge she had laid before him, or would he retreat to familiar competition? Every second stretched as if the universe was holding its breath, waiting for her next move. "All right, let's suppose we could collaborate," James began, a flurry of uncertainty flashing behind his typically confident facade. "You'll have to convince me first, in tangible terms, how you plan to foster user trust. Actionable commitments sound great, but what measures can you implement right away?" She found herself immersed in the thrill of the debate, a tug-of-war between ideas that mirrored her internal landscape. "We'll begin by integrating an ethical score into the app's framework," she replied, channeling the adrenaline coursing through her. "This score will change dynamically based on user feedback and data privacy protocols. It's about building a community where users not only feel secure, but also take part in the app's evolution. They'll have a voice in shaping how their data is collected and used." James frowned slightly, his thoughtful expression revealing a blend of skepticism and curiosity. "And you think users know what's best for them? They've been conditioned to trade privacy for convenience." Sarah grasped this opportunity, a chance to unravel a deeper layer of her vision. "Perhaps, but that's where education comes in. We need to empower users, educate them about their data rights, give them informed choices that are clear. Instead of bombarding users with jargon, we make it intuitive. When people understand their power, they're more likely to engage." As she spoke, vivid memories whirled in her mind, her late-night brainstorming sessions with Zoe, the countless hours spent understanding user behavior. Bridging ethical tech with user empowerment was not just a concept for her, it was a personal mission. She could feel the resonance of her argument building momentum, stirring something deep within her. Each word pulled her closer to her core purpose. "So you want to not only create an app, but to initiate a cultural shift in how we perceive technology?" James probed. His intrigued tone was unmissable. "Exactly," she asserted, her resolve hardening into something formidable. "It's about creating a platform where technology reflects our values. If we can build accountability into our processes now, we lay the groundwork for an ethical standard that others might follow." For a moment, a silence filled the room as James stared at her, the cogs of his mind visibly turning. The earlier skepticism was rapidly morphing into recognition, and Sarah seized the moment to press further. "Will this collaboration merely be a deal for you, or will you stand by the ideals we discuss?" He weighed her words carefully, and she could see the internal conflict playing out on his face. This was more than a business transaction. This was about reshaping futures, including their own. "I need to see a detailed roadmap, something actionable." James leaned forward, excitement mingled with trepidation once again. "Can we afford it?" She nodded, feeling a spark of possibility ignite within her. "We can streamline our approach, focusing on one aspect of user empowerment first, data privacy. Our initial release can pioneer transparency features, where users can dictate the terms of how their information is utilized. Each step could become a learning experience, a foundation on which we build credibility." With every word, she felt the layers of her conviction solidify. This collaboration could redefine not just their careers, but the industry itself. Yet, a twinge of apprehension still crept in. Was she ready for this leap with James? Was she prepared to intertwine her future with someone whose motives could shift? The air around them crackled with tension. The moment felt transitory, the kind that could spiral into triumph or disaster. But Sarah had recognized a truth essential to her journey. To enact change, she must confront her fears boldly. James had become a formidable ally through conflict. She could foster a partnership that challenged established norms. As if sensing her internal shift, James met her gaze with a newfound intensity. Let's set a timeline for these initiatives, but mark my words, this could make or break us. Then let's ensure it makes us. Just as they committed to forging a path ahead, a loud knock on the door startled them both, the sound reverberating through the charged air like a jolt of electricity. Sarah's heart raced once more as the door swung open, revealing a courier holding a package, its significance completely unknown, but somehow threatening to derail the momentum they had so carefully built. What unforeseen challenge awaited them next? As the courier entered, the package cradled in her hands shimmered under the fluorescent lights, an unwelcome interloper in a moment that had felt so momentous only seconds prior. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, a stark contrast to the hopeful exuberance she had just felt. James's face darkened with uncertainty as he regarded the mysterious object, a physical representation of the unknown lurking just outside their carefully developed plans. "Is that for us?" James asked, his voice edged with both curiosity and unease. The courier nodded, a nonchalant smile on her face. "It's addressed to your company, Sarah. Priority shipment." What could it be? An errant marketing kit? Or a product prototype gone wrong? Sarah's mind raced through a galaxy of possibilities, suddenly coated in dread. She gestured for the courier to set it down on the table, her heartbeat echoing like footsteps in a quiet corridor of her mind. James leaned closer as she gingerly peeled away the tape, revealing a sleek black box. As the top lifted away, it revealed an array of documents and an ominous USB drive. The words on the papers were unmistakable. Data violations, breaches of user privacy that could spell not only ruin for their fledgling project, but also serious consequences for her reputation. A chill settled in her bones. This was information that could implicate her, could unravel everything she had worked for. She glanced at James, who appeared as stricken as she was. "What the hell is this?" he whispered, as if uttering the words aloud would make the reality less damning. "I don't know," she replied, her voice thin, "but we need to act fast, if this is legitimate." "It seems the world is keenly aware of your ambitions, Sarah, perhaps too aware," James interrupted, his eyes narrowing as he skimmed the documents. "This could destroy our partnership before it even begins. We need a plan, and soon." The sudden shift of atmosphere amplified her internal conflicts. Sarah had been on the precipice of initiating something groundbreaking with James, a collaboration deeply rooted in her values. But standing here with the weight of potential disaster looming over her, she felt a torrent of self-doubt crash over her like icy water. Had she been naive to think she could bring change to an industry riddled with ethical failings? But deep within that doubt lay a flicker, an incorruptible determination. That same resolve which had pushed her to challenge James now ignited her spirit anew. "Whatever this is, we can't let it shatter our vision," she declared, her voice growing steadier. "We need to assess the validity of these claims and develop a response that showcases our commitment to transparency and integrity. We'll use this as a teaching moment." James studied her, seeming to measure the conviction bleeding from her. "Are you willing to risk everything? This could end up sounding a death knell for us," he cautioned, a mix of respect and apprehension in his features. "Risk is the crucible of change," she countered. "If we allow fear to guide us, we'll perpetuate the very cycles we want to dismantle." With newfound urgency, they gathered the documents and plugged the USB drive into Sarah's laptop. As the screen flickered to life, anxiety twisted like a knife in her gut. It was now or never, a chance to confront the risks together, to carve their narrative by embracing transparency rather than cowering in shadow. But as the files opened, Sarah immediately noted something troubling. The information unveiled was evidently more than just data irregularities. It included potential strategies employed by competitors, something that might turn this entire situation from a revelation into a weapon against them. Amidst this chaos, her future felt more perilous than ever. "Let's not just react, let's be strategic," she asserted, energy coursing through her veins. "We'll build a counter-strategy, focusing on education about user rights. Let's showcase how responsible tech can thrive in the face of adversity." The tension in the room was palpable, as James nodded in reluctant agreement. They were embarking on a treacherous path, navigating accusations and hidden agendas that could either fortify their bond or tear it apart. And just as the realization of their new course began to settle, a familiar ping jolted Sarah from her thoughts. An email notification blinked on her screen, accompanied by an attachment titled "Final Draft Ethics in Tech." Heart racing, she clicked it open, unaware of how deeply this final revelation would ripple through their already stormy seas. What revelations awaited within that document, and could they truly harness this chaos to fuel their mission? Sarah took a deep breath, her focus sharpening as she cast a glance at James, who appeared equally intrigued and anxious. It was time to dive into the impending truth outlined in the email that had just interrupted their moment of turmoil. Her fingers hovered over the laptop's keyboard, the screen reflecting the contrast between the overwhelming weight of uncertainty and the flickers of optimism they had fought so hard to muster. As she pulled up the document titled "Final Draft Ethics in Tech," her heartbeat quickened. This could either be an opportunity for clarity or a pathway to destruction. The contents began as a familiar anthem, an overview of ethical considerations in technology, underscoring the responsibilities developers hold. But the deeper Sarah ventured into the text, the more insidious implications emerged. It wasn't mere theory, it suggested strict implementation strategies for transparency, but included damning allegations against their project, unfounded claims of privacy breaches that could potentially tear them apart. She scrolled farther, each line a tightening noose around her aspirations. A sinking feeling coiled in her stomach. This wasn't just a corporate attack. It was a personal affront crafted with precision to render their app obsolete before it even launched. "James," she whispered, her voice steadying as she confronted the urgent reality. "This document outlines strategies from major competitors, and they're attempting to undermine our core message. It's not just about our app, it's about us as individuals." James leaned in closer, studying the words as if trying to penetrate their surface, struggling to make sense of this barrage. If they're informed enough to distort this narrative, they're not merely targeting an idea, he murmured, his brow furrowing with concern. This is a full-blown attempt to silence us before we even begin. A spark of defiance ignited within Sarah. Then let's flip the script. We won't let fear define us. This is our chance to increase transparency and lead by example. She felt the relentless fire of her convictions reigniting. She had fought too hard to let adversity extinguish her dreams. James regarded her with a mixture of respect and determination. "Okay, I'm in. But we need specific counters. We can't just react emotionally. We need actionable commitments." Yes, her mind began to race through potential strategies. We could launch a public campaign outlining our ethical standards, educate our audience on what transparent tech looks like and how we plan to uphold those standards. Co-host webinars or create informative content, James suggested, nodding along. Bring the user community into the conversation, make them advocates of our mission. It felt electric. They were no longer mere competitors, but allies against a shared storm. As they mapped out ideas, this storm transformed into an opportunity, a chance to reshape the narrative, to turn vulnerability into strength. Each moment further solidified their collaboration, establishing a foundation built on mutual respect, ethical integrity, and shared ambition. With renewed energy, Sarah opened a new document. This would become their manifesto, the declaration that would launch them into the next phase of their journey. What if we name our campaign Unseen Truths, focusing on the realities of user data and what they deserve? Brilliant. James's eyes shone with determination. We can promote how vital it is for users to understand their rights. Together, we'll make sure they have the knowledge to advocate for their own interests. Co-host webinars or create informative content, James suggested, nodding along. Bring the user community into the conversation. Make them advocates of our mission. It felt electric. They were no longer mere competitors, but allies against a shared storm. As they mapped out ideas, this storm transformed into an opportunity, a chance to reshape the narrative, to turn vulnerability into strength. Each moment further solidified their collaboration, establishing a foundation built on mutual respect, ethical integrity, and shared ambition. With renewed energy, Sarah opened a new document. This would become their manifesto, the declaration that would launch them into the next phase of their journey. What if we name our campaign Unseen Truths, focusing on the realities of user data and what they deserve? Brilliant. James's eyes shone with determination. We can promote how vital it is for users to understand their rights. Together, we'll make sure they have the knowledge to advocate for their own interests. The future that had once dangled precariously now shifted under their feet, stabilizing into a promise of collaboration and integrity. With each plan scribbled, Sarah's confidence solidified. They were transitioning from being defined by their past struggles to becoming catalysts for change. Yet, the stakes remained high. As they strategized, she couldn't ignore the swirling doubts that lingered at the back of her mind. Would this stand against the negative perceptions that had already permeated the industry? Could this partnership withstand external pressures? "Do you think we can really overcome this?" she finally asked, her voice steady despite the weight of uncertainty. "I know we can." His confidence wrapped around her like a lifeline. "We're committed to being transparent, and we will hold ourselves accountable. But to build something genuine, we need to listen to our users, to each other. This is about more than competition. It's about redefining the ethos of tech." With their shared purpose crystallizing in the air, Sarah felt solid, unyielding confidence blossom within her. They were no longer battling James's preconceived notions. They were crafting their own narrative, one rooted deeply in ethical standards. They finished drafting their manifesto, outlining principles that prioritized innovation without sacrificing user safety. As they pushed away from the table, a shared vision stirred between them, an undeniable force guiding their next steps. They had risen from competition to collaboration, crafting a message that resonated far beyond their app. They were no longer merely seeking recognition, but carving their legacy into a landscape thirsty for integrity. Fully invested in her evolution, Sarah understood her achievements were more profound than placing among tech giants. They were about forging a pathway for meaningful technology. She had conquered self-doubt and transformed it into impactful action. "You know," Sarah began, a satisfied smile breaking across her face, "I never thought I could stand across from someone like you and collaborate instead of competing. This is achievement." James chuckled, the walls of his skepticism slowly melting away. "True, perhaps this is the nuance we've both been searching for." As they stepped forward together, ready to embrace the world's uncertainties, one truth resonated clearly. They were not just developers or competitors, but changemakers paving the way for a future that values ethics as much as advancement. Their transformational journey was only beginning. The narrative would change, their voices making waves that could not be subdued. United in a commitment to ethical tech, their partnership shone as an example of what could happen when ambition met moral clarity. And as Sarah ventured into the unknown, equipped with newfound confidence, the excitement of what lay ahead sparked a sense of fulfillment deep within. She had not only proven herself, but had also achieved the means to ensure her voice would always be part of the evolving story of technology. With this declaration in their hands, she marveled at how triumph and resilience could interlace, crafting a new legacy that would echo in the industry for years to come. Now, are you ready to join their journey? Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your love for personal growth. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's incredible transformation. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of resilience and collaboration. Let's amplify this message together.